In this video I'm going to talk about color space in Illustrator. So in these two files here, I can see at the top that one is CMYK, which is the color space you want if you're sending something for commercial printing. And this one is in RGB, so this is fine for stuff that's going to be seen on screen or sent to the office printer. But I am going to work with converting these. So this file here, that's CMYK, this would be fine to link in InDesign, or I could send this out to be cut vinyl, or any of those processes. It could be screen printed, any of that stuff. So this is ready to go if we're talking about commercial printing. This RGB image, RGB being the color system of light as opposed to ink and pigment as CMYK is, this would be fine for placing in a document that is only going to be seen on screens, or was just going to be printed at the office laser printer or an inkjet printer. So it'd also be fine for anything that's going to be exported for web use. Of course, this type of file can't be, at this point in time, can't be easily rendered on a screen since it's an Illustrator file. So I could export a PNG, for example, or a JPEG, and it would be good to go. So I'm going to pretend that this document is headed to be linked in an InDesign file, which then is going to be commercially printed, so it needs to be CMYK. So I'm going to open that window for now. So I'm going to go to File, Document Color Mode, and you can see we only have two options. Photoshop had more options, and that's just because of the nature of the files that it works with. So I've only got the two here, so I'm going to change it to CMYK. And you might have seen a little bit of a shift in the red, and now my tab says CMYK, so I know this is a CMYK document. In my color panel, you can see that it's defaulting to CMYK. And to make a different selection here so that you can see the sliders. Now in this corner menu, you always have the option for other color spaces. But this should be your CMYK. If you, in your Swatches panel, open some swatches from your library, under your default swatches, you notice you have some options. So your print ones are going to be CMYK, but the ones that are for screen, like web, video, and mobile, are definitely going to be RGB. So you want to be careful about what kind of swatches you're working with. So I'm going to open a couple of these just so we can see. Default. I'll use mobile. So if I hover over one of these swatches, I can see that it gives me an RGB color formula. And I'm in this mobile tab, so that makes sense. RGB colors should be used for anything that's on a screen, like a mobile device. In the print tab, if I hover over some, you can see that it's giving me a CMYK formula, which is mixing inks for printing. Makes sense because this is a set of print swatches. So a lot of times you want to be really careful if you download something from VectEasy or sites like that. A lot of times they will be in RGB mode. So if you're doing a project or some design that's tended to be sent to a commercial printer, or will definitely end up there, you want to make sure that all of your links that you place in InDesign are in CMYK. So in this file, I'm in CMYK, and I'm going to say, well, I need a version of this to go on their website. So I'm going to go to File, Document Color Mode, and change it to RGB. So now when I open the color palette, you notice it still has CMYK. That's because this color was mixed that way, even though we're now in an RGB file. So you can't always go by your color palette, sometimes you have to manually change that to RGB if you're going to make some color changes after you've converted. So don't go by what the color palette tells you, even though it's tempting, because if you had another document open, it's probably not going to be accurate. So, moral of the story, make sure you look at your tab and consider what you're going to use this document for. If it's something like a logo, you're definitely going to have versions that are RGB and versions that are CMYK. Just make sure you're absolutely done with it before you go and do all those conversions.